Hello, beautiful. I am so excited to introduce you to today's guest. She's a friend of a friend of a friend, and I am so happy that we were introduced to each other. She is a bulimia and binge eating coach who is helping women conquer their binge eating challenges. Her content is something that I wish I had seen back when I was really struggling with my binge eating challenge. And I just know that today's conversation is going to be so helpful. So, without further ado, welcome Maggie Bird to Your Body Is Not the Problem podcast.
Oh my gosh, Leah, I'm so excited to be here. I just love your message and the work you do and just the fun liveliness and I'd say easygoingness you bring where it's just and confidence. I just love it all. So I'm very happy to be here.
Well, thank you. The feeling is mutual. To start, would you mind telling us a bit more, please, about you, your binge eating journey, and your body image journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I struggled with body image from as early as I can remember. And I think the interesting thing is it wasn't necessarily weight, all only weight, you know, feeling insecure that my legs had more hair than the other people. And somebody would make a comment about it, or the way my feet looked, they were wider than other people. Just so many different things that I picked up along the way. Um, I think so much too from just adults who were not aware and conscious of the comments they were making. And yeah, and then the body stuff was just right alongside of that. And I'd say that really hit me around the time that I needed to start shopping for bras. And I noticed my body just looked different from other people. A very close family member had gone on a diet and lost all this weight, and there was just so much praise around it. So yeah, so from a very early age, I remember trying to go on a diet at 11 years old, which was just don't eat for as long as I can. And I think emotional eating was also very much a part of my early life. And so, and emotional eating, not paying attention to your body, um, wanting more just to have more, things like that. Um, and so, by high school, I had started having some issues with more disordered eating behavior and all over the map, periods where I was, very much on the higher side of things where I was just constantly overeating, and then periods where I would, yo-yo. I'd say my real kind of journey to freedom with food and freedom with binge eating began after I became a mom. I had had a period of years where I had stopped struggling with bulimia, but it wasn't that I had healed my relationship with food or done that work. It was just that I had actually started using substances and all of these other things that were kind of substituting that emotional component that it can be, where it was taking away the emotions and things like that. And so I had just basically stopped binging and stopped purging and stopped engaging in those behaviors during that time. But you know I got pregnant and it all came back. And so it was just a 2.5 or so year journey of me struggling again, being a mom, being at a different place in my life where it's I was not that person. I didn't identify as that person who was going to struggle with food. I was so driven. I had all of these goals I wanted to accomplish and just be the best mom I could be. And it's so much of that energy went into dieting well and exercising well, and then on the flip side, just not taking care of myself. And then the binging was kind of a consequence of that, I would say. So yeah, that's a huge background.
No, I appreciate you being open and vulnerable. And I can actually relate to when I was binge eating. When I stopped binge eating, it wasn't because I had a healthier relationship with food. I was just going extreme, but in the other direction and with other um, disordered eating patterns.
Yeah.
And so it took me years to realize, oh, all of that was not actually helpful or serving me. Um, and so I think it is just important to realize that our relationship with food, I guess, is going to shift in so many different ways. And it's important to recognize which behaviors are serving us and which ones aren't. And I think there's also just a lot of power in hearing others' journeys and be
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh, I'm not crazy or I'm not alone. Like, I remember there was a podcast that I listened to, and she had mentioned that she went back into the garbage can to get food. And I was like, oh my God, I've done that. And I
Yeah.
thought I was so disgusting and so broken because I did that. And like hearing that someone else had done that, I was like, okay, it's still not necessarily what I want to be doing, but at least I don't feel crazy and alone.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is such a nice thing to know that you're not alone. And I think as a mom, there was this layer of guilt because like your early years with your kid are such precious time, like moments that you're never going to get back. And so having, as you know, the struggle with food where it's so consuming of your mind and your time and your intention, trying to micromanage, oh, how am I going to fit this carb in here and this fat in here? And now I failed. And all of those thoughts just, so I think for me too, there was that layer of guilt. Yeah. So I want to say, if there are any moms listening like that, um, you can, like, you're not alone in feeling like, you know, maybe you're doing something that's not good for your kids, but beating yourself up about it is definitely not the solution. I think there's ways you can use it to motivate yourself instead of using it against yourself.
100%. I also think the other side is that your children get to see you then heal and improve and change your mindset and sees like, oh, you don't have to stay in the same mindset. And you get to then, because you're not the only one who influences them. If they do grow up and they do have those eating challenges, you get to be like, oh, I get to help you because of my experience and what I've learned, and helping them heal and improve their relationship with food faster than maybe you have. And so I think there's still like the positive side of you having firsthand experience and how you can help them in the future, possibly.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I have like a rose-colored glasses, but I honestly do believe that when you start early, you can have such an influence on them not struggling because there's this thing, and if you decide to become a mom, like, you will see it. It's this crazy thing where you see moments. There has to be multiple moments every single day where you're like, "Oh, wow, like, the message I give right now is going to have such a big impact," because it's one of those kind of core messages, like, or core implications. And I think the beauty of being a mom is you see just how many times in your own life that probably happened to you, and you think about how maybe your parents responded in those situations, the little one-off comments. Let me give an example. Oh, like, you can't eat that, that's bad. Like, how many times that gets said, or comments about other people's bodies. And like, I was talking to a client recently, and she just remembers being in the car with her mom and her sister, and them always talking about other people, how beautiful they were and all these things, and how the message that she got at such a young age was she looked different and she wasn't beautiful. And I think, like, the more awareness you can have, even in the and intentionality you can have, I think we can have such an impact on our kids. I think it's really amazing. But maybe it's rose-colored glasses. We'll have to see as the years go by.
I don't think there's anything wrong with rose-colored glasses.
Yeah.
I think that's a really great way to look at it.
Yeah.
So for today, I was hoping that we could chat about the not necessarily like the best approach, because everyone's going to have something different that'll work best for them, but best advice, I guess, for the upcoming holidays for before, during, and after, so that
Mhm.
we can work on not being worried and struggling with our binge eating. Because I feel like before the holidays, we often can get in our minds of worrying about something before it even necessarily happens. It might not happen, but we spend 24/7 stressing and worrying and maybe restricting extra. And so if you are struggling with binge eating, what might what might that look like leading up to the holidays?
It could look like, yeah, worrying about the holidays, um, thinking a lot about the past holidays and how that has gone, and really projecting that kind of same thing to play out on this holiday. It can look like dieting more ahead of time and kind of fantasizing in the back of your mind about the food that's gonna be at Thanksgiving, whether you're planning on eating it or not. So, like, you could secretly be planning like, "Oh, I can't eat it, I'm not gonna eat it," but also still having the kind of loop in your mind about, oh, the pecan pie and the whatever it is for you. Um, the stuffing. I'd say just general anxiety, like the emotional temperature in the room is gonna be just, like, worrying, being afraid, feeling deprived ahead of time, like, "I just wish I could eat these foods, and I can't." So, what can come as a result of all this is you can be trying to diet and maybe binging already, like, you're already binging this week because you're already so stressed, already making yourself feel so deprived. You could be dieting and not binging, but really setting yourself up for a binge on Thanksgiving. You could be planning how you're not gonna eat and you've got your whole meal set up for Thanksgiving that it's gonna be different from everybody else, but then as you're packing up the leftovers, all of a sudden you find yourself halfway through the leftover pie. So it's like, I think the general feeling is like worry and anxiety and feeling deprived, um, which sets up that other swing where it's like more desire for the food, more feeling like more compulsiveness, like you literally can't stop once you start, and a lot of mental focus on how it's gonna go wrong, how it's gone wrong before, and that, like, drill sergeant, "You can't do it," and I'm trying to come up with a name, I think they call it the rebel dieter in intuitive eating, where it's like, "F it, I don't care." So I think those are really kind of the what would be going on right now.
For sure. I think it's interesting because I'm currently going through a certification program and we were learning about binge eating. And one of the things that they said is that binge eating has a brilliant reason. It's not like a willpower problem. And so it's like you were saying, if you are dieting, if you're heavily restricting, if you're extra stressed, those can be the things that lead to the binge eating, but it's because your body is on your team. Because if you over restricted and you haven't been fully nourished, your body is going to be like, hey, I need some extra food now. But what would you recommend someone do prior to the holidays to prepare in advance to prevent binging and just having like a happy and calm and peaceful holiday?
I would say there's a few things, and I'm gonna focus on the kind of the areas I talked about in terms of, like, I think mindset, then the behavior and the emotions are kind of really important here. So in terms of, like, the mindset, I would be really spending time focusing on the positives of setting yourself up for a successful Thanksgiving versus worrying about how it could or would go wrong. So that might look like, you know, what is it going to mean for me to be able to enjoy the holidays without binging on them and being present with my family? What is it going to mean for me to not struggle with food anymore? And like really going into the layers of like what that would mean for your life. Because, you know, in addition to like the fact that you're probably setting yourself up with under eating, it's also the habit component of like binging might just be on the default spin, right? So we need to give our brain and our emotions that kind of like desire to do whatever uncomfortable steps, because like in the moment you're gonna want to worry because worrying feels like, oh well, if I worry about it maybe it'll not happen, when it's usually the opposite. So I would spend some time doing that. In terms of eating, I would try to have some solid meals. I would not be dieting this week. I would be eating consistently. particularly on the day, but I mean, leading up is as important as well. But like on the day, have your breakfast, have your lunch, do not wait to eat. That is just going to make you feel hungrier. And it's again going to make you feel so much more compulsive. And I would have, I would try and eat slow. I wouldn't go in with like the rules of like, oh, I can only have this for anything, but like as much as you can, as much as feels like within your comfort or like the edge of your comfort zone. I would say, because the truth is like overeating on one day is so much better than having a binge,
Mhm.
like because just because let's say you go into the Thanksgiving and you do end up eating a little past fullness or way past fullness, you can learn from that for next time about gauging like where your hunger and fullness and all those things are if you just like allow that to be a learning lesson versus I overate, now I failed, let me go binge over it. So yeah, and just like leaning into the fact that this is going to be a practice experience. If you've been binging for years, then this Thanksgiving is your practice moment to build up for next year to be totally like an easy binge free time, or to look for Christmas being easier than this. It's just like looking at it as you're always like growing.
Definitely. One question I have for you when it comes to shifting your mindset from like what could go wrong versus what are the benefits that you can gain from the holidays when you're not binging, do you ever come across the mindset obstacle, I guess, of not feeling worthy of those good things happening? And so it just feels like those aren't even on the table, I guess.
So interesting. I actually don't in my like in the women that I work with, it's normally just that they're not sure if they can do it, like because they've struggled for so long, so they worry if they worry, can I do it, can I not? And I have not come across, am I worthy of it? But if that is something you're struggling with, like that is a sign for to me that it's like time to reconnect like with your values, with what really matters to you in life in this world, because yeah, there are definitely moments in life where we feel like we don't love ourselves and we don't love what we've been doing. And I think the best way to handle that and rebuild that sense of worth is to find it in the things you love. So if you love um if you have the value of like honesty and integrity, and you have even like fictional characters in a book that you just their character to you is like so heroic and you love them, it's like connecting to those things. It's like connecting to the character you love, or maybe like your pet, and kind of just spending time in your own mind, like falling back in love with these things in the world and finding your value through those kind of more core values. Does that Are you picking up what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yes, I
Okay.
absolutely love all of that
Okay,
so
okay.
much. Um, my other thought around preparing for the holidays, and I'm curious to know your thoughts on using the scale, because typically I'm team don't use the scale. So I
Oh,
wonder
yeah.
how that impacts leading up to the holidays.
So I'll be very straight shooter. So I have a mix of clients that do or don't use the scale. But the fact of the matter is if you use the scale, you are going to make it harder on yourself to focus on this. Like, what is your main goal? Is your main goal to no longer struggle with binge eating, or is your main goal to like hold on to whatever weight goal you have right now? And I will say that with time, with letting go of binge eating, like your body will settle into something that's comfortable, and like you can still have body related, or in my view as a coach, which everybody has different opinions on this, but I do believe you can have body related goals, but it has to be once you've already done all the healing work, by which I mean you love yourself no matter what. You see your worth as like inherently in you, and like you know that you can achieve whatever you want in life regardless, which takes time, but like everybody can get there. And you've really solidified the things with food. Like you've practiced eating cookies enough to the point where cookies are no big deal. Like your weight, you can focus on your weight then. I think when clients continue to weigh themselves, it's because they're like clinging on to that right now. And I see it come at a detriment in terms of like maybe the progress is a little slower. They don't feel as good consistently. So yeah, so I just think it's, especially on something like Thanksgiving, you can do it, but you'll pay a price for doing it, if that makes sense.
100%.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
don't blame, like, who you are. So, like, here's the message I would say, like, if you weigh yourself and then struggle, I want you to like, you find yourself struggling later, I want you to backtrack the struggle and, like, really be honest about where weighing yourself might be impacting you, because the worst thing to do is, like, to be engaging in these behaviors and then make your struggle mean, "Oh, I guess I can't really do this." When it's like, "No, no, no." It's like, maybe you just need to not weigh yourself and really, really go all in on this particular goal, and then you'll totally be fine. You'll be fine.
Exactly. I know for myself, I would weigh myself before, during, and after the
Oh,
holidays.
yeah.
And I always used it as a tool to beat myself up. And it's like, how is that actually helping you? And so I personally fully agree that you can have whatever goals you want for changing the appearance of your body. I just highly recommend you learn to love your body first and then do it from a place of loving it and appreciating it and even just neutrality towards your body.
Yeah, and I'll just say this because I was the girl that had, like, the photos of myself on my phone to hate, to, like, be like, "Oh, this is the motivation because you never wanna look like that again." Like, so much just, like, I would use the word like disgust with myself and my body. And now I look at those photos and I'm like, "Oh my God, Maggie, I love you. Like, look at you. You're pregnant. You look beautiful." Like, I can find something positive in every photo. I think before it was the kind of the bridge between where I was and now was like a stage of being like, okay, well, I'm just not going to focus on it right now. Then followed by a stage of the neutrality, followed by where I am now, which is like just the love, like the love and the worthiness. So even if at first you just have to ignore it, I think that's okay. And I think the neutrality, as you say, is also, it's okay. And it doesn't mean that other side won't come where you do feel the love for yourself no matter what.
Yeah, for myself, when it comes to photos, I like to think of it as how you can go through like the worst thing in your life, and then like 5 years later, you're like, oh, that's what it was trying to teach me, or like that was the good that came from that hard lesson. When you take a photo of yourself and you don't like it, but then a year later, 3 years later, you're like,
Yes.
oh, I look really good in it. That good was
Yes.
still there when you took the photo. It just
Yeah.
took you longer to see it.
Absolutely, I totally agree. I think actually I did a lot of like self-recordings at those time, and I found a video of myself, and I was saying, I was like, "You know what? I know I've gained weight, but I was just looking at photos of me from a couple months ago and I thought I was big then and now I think I was fine then." So, I think this can evolve over time. Like, so I completely agree. I think it just, and holding that, like, it just makes it mean so much less in the moment.
Mhm. Yeah, but yeah, like you said, if you have to just ignore it for now,
Oh, yeah.
that's totally cool. Don't delete the photos, just move on and know that you can look back on them in a future day and you'll be so happy you didn't delete them.
Yeah, or, like, just yeah, like, and so for the scale, one more thing I wanna say is, like, usually when people continue weighing themselves, it is really just because 'cause they're afraid of gaining weight. So, it's good to kind of be aware of why you're doing something, because then you can make the decision, like, "Oh, if I'm doing this because I'm afraid of gaining weight, and I know that's maybe holding me back from maybe eating enough or from letting go of the stress," then that's something you can start to evaluate more effectively.
For sure. So, moving on to the present. So, during the holidays, when you're at the gathering, what are some action steps that they can do to have the most enjoyable holiday and not be stressed about binging after?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is actually just like doing thinking ahead of time for how you can make it as enjoyable as possible for yourself. I think sometimes we just are so in our heads and so busy that we don't even really take the time to think like, how can I make this amazing for myself? And if amazing is too big of a word, like how could I make this better? And I'll give an example which is not related to food, but I think it's helpful. My One of my clients is in school and university, and she's been struggling with her work, and like even though she's been binge free for a while, she got triggered to binge, and she realized like a lot of it was like almost procrastinating from this university work. And when we dove into it, we realized it's just the way she was doing it wasn't working for her. Like, she doesn't love the whole academic part, like, sitting down and writing something feels so bad for her, and I was like, "We need to, like, get you walking and speaking your essay into a freaking thing," and, you know, like, things like that, where it's like, you use your mind, because you've got a brilliant mind, you use it to get creative. So, what that might look like at the holidays, like, I don't know what it would look like. Would it look like you taking a walk halfway through? Would it look like you making sure that you're connecting with a certain person more intentionally? Would it look like, I don't know, bringing some special apple cider that you actually love and brings you joy? Like, whatever it would be, so I think it would be planning that, and then also planning, this is a huge part of my work, plan instead of worrying about what's happened in the past, like, use it as some little bit of instructiveness for yourself. So, like, going into it being like, "Okay, I know that this checkpoint in the evening or day might be difficult, so, like, what can I do to take care of myself?" And so during that might look like taking a breather, taking some breaths, having an idea of, like, what you will do if you like, what's gonna happen when you have that piece of pie and you start having a craving to binge, or, whatever the thing is for you. Just, like, more planning, and not from a place of, "I have to follow the plan like a diet." No, it's just like, I'm doing this to support myself, and I think the more you plan for it, the better level of awareness you will have to learn from whatever happens, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you were mentioning before how we live for like the scale and using it out of a place of fear. And I think, at least for myself personally, I have lived a lot of my life based out of fear. And now
Yes.
my main mission right now is to live my life out of joy. And so
Yeah.
I like the shift from how can you just make and like plan, and I mean even when you're in the middle of the dinner, how can you just make it more joyful? Turning up
Yeah.
the music, like you said, going
Yeah.
to talk to someone specific.
Yeah.
And you deserve more joy in your life, so you're not selfish or greedy, and it's okay to take care of yourself. And I like the idea of just thinking of how can you still implement self-care habits while you're at the dinner.
Yeah, and as you were speaking, like, something else came to me, which is just like, if, like, let's say you're hosting or something like that, like, what expectations can you just set aside? Because, like, things do not have to be perfect, and just recognizing that, like, we have a certain amount of mental bandwidth, right? Just like as human beings, we have a certain amount of mental bandwidth. And when we can lighten up on the expectations, we never get into a situation where it feels like you have to choose between living and not binging. So, like, if your expectation is the house has to be perfect, like, can we leave the dishes in the sink one night? It will not mean that they're in the sink the rest of your life. It's like things like that.
But yeah, I think in terms of expectations and stuff, I think especially because a lot of us are perfectionists, or we have
Yes.
those tendencies that we have really, really high expectations.
Yeah.
And it's for ourselves, it's for how other people are going to act. And I like how you were saying, like, loosen those expectations, maybe shift some of them, and you can
Yeah.
have so much more fun during the holidays.
Yeah. So I totally love that you shared about that the fear is kind of what what was driving you throughout your life and how that has shifted. Because I think that the perfectionism really is a fear. The perfectionism really is a fear based thing. And one of the fears to start paying attention to is this fear of stuff not working, like, and not happening. Because I think one of the reasons, like, even with dieting, like, why people get into the over dieting in the first place is that there's this lack of really trust with ourselves where we feel like we can't believe that it's going to happen if we take it slow. Does that make sense?
Mhm. I'm trying to think of what were some of the expectations that I remember. I mean, the one expectation, like you mentioned already, was that I would be eating something other or something different than what everyone else would be eating.
Yes, that was I like remember it so clearly. It was like buying my own thing and only having the turkey breast with, all veggies separately cooked so there's no oil, like things like that. Um yeah.
Have you noticed actually any challenges from shifting your relationship with eating and then going to these gatherings and the people are like, "Oh, but you don't want to like this anymore." And it's like they're almost judging you for not being in that diet mentality because they're still in a diet mentality?
So interestingly, not in my experience because nobody around me is dieting, but I do have somebody in my family that diets, but they would never say that. And then also like I see how hungry they are and like how insecure, like literally, like at least they verbalize they are in terms of their body. And so it doesn't seem appealing to me. Yeah, so it just does not appeal to me. And I was thinking about this today too, because I know that there's kind of this common thing where people get hurt or, struggle with, if somebody's making comments about your eating or your body or things like that. I was thinking about that before our call. And I think it goes back to being so clear on why you're doing it and feeling so good about that, that even if that hurts you, you're not going to be so thrown off by it. Does that make sense to you? It's like, okay, yeah, like I wish they didn't say that, or like this is kind of stupid or hurtful or annoying, but I still remember why I'm doing this. So I don't really even care.
Yeah, and I think also just they're probably not living the life that you want to live. And I
Oh,
think
yeah. Yeah.
remembering that, but yeah, you can let it go in one ear and out the other.
Yeah.
So, last main question for you is what tips and advice would you have for someone for after the holidays to not feel guilty for what they ate and to still prevent binging?
So I'd say, like, regardless of what happens on the holidays, like, I want every single person listening to this to think of this as a learning experience. They are in a period of growth and progress, and this is your time to learn, even if it goes bad, even if it goes good. Like, if it goes good, we want to understand why it went good. Why did it go good? Like, we want to know, like, was it good because you did take that walk, or you listened to that song before, or you pumped yourself up in the car, or you let the dishes lay in the sink and, whatever. When you think of it as learning, you're going to be so much more open to experimenting. And I'll just share one of the most important moments in one of my clients' journey is when she noticed she was still hungry after eating a whole poke bowl with all the carbs, and she let herself eat some of her daughter's. And what she found from that experience is later that night, she was not hungry for dinner. Like, and so when you're like willing to take that risk, like she could have learned, like, oh, actually, I ended up feeling really sick afterwards. So maybe I need to like pause and wait before I eat my daughter's Poke Bowl. But like, either way, you're going to be learning. You're going to get the lesson that you needed to learn, or you're going to get a win that's going to teach you something. So I want like everybody to not look at whatever happened as bad. It's good either way. And when you have that mindset, that is what's going to help you not binge over the results, or not if you struggle with binging on the leftovers or whatever, like it will make that so much easier. And like specifically trying to think, just do more of whatever like we've already talked about in terms of trying to like eating enough, working on that self-belief and that desire, and you know using your mind to plan and to create more joyful experiences for yourself.
Right. So you don't need to work off the food that you ate. You didn't need
Oh,
to.
okay, yeah, perfect. You gave me the context I was missing something. Yeah, no, I mean, I wouldn't. That's again, it's like the scale. It's that mindset of compensation. It's that mindset of compensation, which again is putting you back in the weight loss context. So I want you to start thinking of it. It's like two different contexts where, not working off or over exercising is not going to hurt you. Like it's not going to hurt you in the long term if we're thinking like months down the line. When months down the line, you really could be done with binging, not experiencing urges, like on track to experience whatever holidays you have throughout the entire next year, not binging, feeling solid with food. Or you could cling to these behaviors like compensating, like, trying to make up for the calories. And that whatever that process is just going to take longer. So I think that is an important reframe.
I also really like the idea of whether it goes good or less good, that you're still learning from it. It's like if it did go really well, okay, what helped it go well? I love
Yeah.
the reminder that you don't only have to learn from the crappier experiences.
Oh, yeah. I think I remember when I learned that too. It was in a workshop. I think it was called Empowerment Workshop, which I think is actually a very fitting name because it's so easy to dismiss when something goes good, almost like we're
Mhm.
just like, okay, all right, what's the next thing I'm gonna, mess up, or I don't know.
Yeah, like it
And
was a
like,
fluke.
yeah, and like I think even in moments when it feels like a fail, there is something in there that is worthy of you celebrating, is worthy of you noticing, oh, I actually did do this different. And so I think it's just so important to find both, to look for both, to learn no matter what. And yeah, I think as long as you can hold that mindset, like whatever you need to do to get yourself there, that is what will get you the fastest results. And I'm not talking about like quick wins. I'm talking about like the fastest results available to you. It's really when you drop into that perfectionist mindset, or it's either pass or fail, where it starts to take you longer, where it starts to be more painful for you, honestly, because when you're in that mindset of you're learning no matter what, you feel good. Like you feel like I'm freaking doing it, man. Like this is amazing. Like I don't care that maybe I binged last night, but I actually did this better and now I know what to do next time. Like it's just a whole different energy of you, emotion of you that you're experiencing on a day-to-day basis.
I love that so much. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. I know it's seriously going to be so helpful, and I wish that younger Leah could have heard all of this, but
Oh,
so very, very happy that we were able to get together and do this. I have 2 questions that I ask all of my guests, though.
okay.
The first one is, what do you wish you could go back and tell younger Maggie?
Trust the little voice in you, because I think at a level we all know this. Like what I'm saying right now will make logical sense to you. The thing that happens is sometimes we don't trust that it will work for us. And so it's like trusting that little voice that's like, maybe I shouldn't be trying to make up for this because like it doesn't make logical sense if I'm actually trying to stop the behavior. And so it would be lean into that self-trust and like what you deep down know is true. That would be one piece. I mean, there's so many, but that's the one that comes to mind in this moment. Yeah.
Love it. Okay, the second question is, what advice would you give to someone who is just starting out to learn to love their body more?
I would say, it's going to seem interesting. I want you to fall in love with where you're going. And again, I mean, I touched on this a little bit earlier, but with your values, what really matters most to you, the impact and life you want to create in this world, and then recognize that you can create that life and impact regardless of your weight or body. I think that is literally the path to like acceptance, and you can just knowing that you can get the body, like you can still make changes later, but like you got to solidify. That's the foundation. So that's what I would say.
So freaking good. I love it. So where can they get in touch with you? And if you have the time, any info that you would like to share about the Binge Freedom Academy?
Oh yeah, for sure. So you can find me at Break Free Binge, just like it's spelled. I'm also on Leah's like friends list, I guess.
Yeah.
So you can find me there. But Break Free Binge. And yeah, I'm hosting the second round of the Binge Freedom Academy, and I'm absolutely like in love with it. Like every day I think like this is exactly what I wish I had, which is such like a beautiful thing to create. Like I'm sure you feel that way about your podcast sometimes, like just like this is what I wish I had. And yeah, it's a 14 week, but we're actually doing 16 calls of coaching. You get access to a full library of like a process for overcoming binge eating, overcoming your urges, and making like feeling confident and free with food. We uh we like work on mindset, we work on the emotional piece, and like a lot of what we talked about here today. So and it is starting in the middle of December. We have early bird doors open right now, so you do save a little money by joining. And yeah.
I think it's so awesome that it starts in the middle of December. I think that's like perfect timing for like kicking off the new year and
Oh
everything.
my
I
gosh, it's
love
gonna be
that.
so good. It's gonna be so good. I just and the first round, like everybody has overcome binge eating in this first round, and it's just so like they're thriving. And we're in the last month, of course, and they're just thriving in their lives, taking on new challenges, being those creative, like I love my life forces, and it's just so beautiful to watch. So I'm excited for everybody who joins, and I appreciate you letting me share.
Yeah, no, that I mean, that makes me so happy just to hear all of their successes. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I will also be sure to add all of that into the show notes below. So if you're listening and you're like, oh my God, I need it, scroll
Yeah.
down and you will be able to find it. But yeah, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to share all this with us. We really appreciate it. And yeah, just very happy that we can make this happen.
Yeah, same. And I appreciate the flexibility. We made it work.
Of course. And just remember that your body is not the problem. And we wish you some happy holidays.